Wake of the Bellerophon by T.B. Dahl. Chapter 17. First Watch. Thomas woke before the ship's bell. 6 years at sea had trained him more thoroughly than comfort ever could, and even his first night as a lieutenant had not persuaded his body to trust sleep beyond duty. In the darkness of his small cabin, he lay for a moment and felt HMS Defiance roll beneath him, with the slow, familiar patience of a ship at anchor. The cabin was not large. No naval cabin was large, unless owned by an admiral, and even then the sea had ways of reminding him it was borrowed space. But it was his. A proper bunk instead of a hammock, a door, a washstand, a locker that could be closed without another midshipman sitting on it. Privacy, after 6 years in the crowded berth, felt almost indecent. He lit the small lantern beside his bunk and checked his watch. 10 minutes before 4 bells, nearly time. His new lieutenant's coat hung ready. He dressed carefully, not from vanity, but because uniform was a kind of language, and men read hesitation in cloth as quickly as in orders. The gold lace on his cuffs was modest, but it changed the world. Yesterday it had marked other men. Today it marked him. When he opened the cabin door, Briggs, his newly assigned servant, stood waiting with a tin mug. "Good morning, sir. Tea's hot, sir." Thomas accepted it, surprised by the small luxury. "Thank you, Briggs. Weather?" "Wind south-southwest, sir. Steady breeze. Slight chop. Stars most of the night, but cloud building eastward." Thomas sipped the strong, sweet tea and nodded. "Very good." The quarterdeck lay under darkness, the air cold and damp. Portsmouth harbour surrounded them as a mass of black water pricked with lanterns from anchored ships. The watch moved quietly. Blocks creaked. A voice murmured forward. Somewhere a man coughed and was instantly shoshed by another who had more respect for sleeping lieutenants than for lungs. Lieutenant Davis saw Thomas approach and gave a small nod. "Right on time, Mr. Oxenham." "I relieve you, sir." The words were formal, simple, and entirely different now that he had the right to speak them. "I stand relieved," Davis replied. "Course north-northeast by compass. Wind south-southwest steady. We are maintaining station with the fleet. Admiral's orders are to sail with the morning tide. Nothing of note beyond a fishing boat warned off during the middle watch." Thomas listened, repeated the essentials, and took his place. When Davis left the deck, responsibility settled on him like cold weather. The quartermaster at the helm, lookouts aloft, hands on watch, 74 guns, hundreds of men, thousands of tons of oak, iron, canvas, powder, and expectation. For the duration of his watch, Defiance was not his ship in ownership, but she was his in duty. That distinction did not make her lighter. He paced slowly, checking compass, sky, wind, and set of the sails. The eastern dark softened. The silhouettes of the Channel fleet began to emerge around them. Ships of the line, frigates, smaller vessels, all waiting for tide and signal. British naval power lay gathered in Portsmouth like a fist not yet closed. Thomas ordered the lookouts changed, had the log line cast, checked the ship's slight motion against anchor and tide, and inspected the watch with a care that made several men stand straighter than fatigue preferred. Every command felt altered. He had given orders before as a midshipman, master's mate, acting officer in all but name. But authority granted by necessity was not the same as authority granted by commission. Men heard the difference even when words did not change. At 6 bells, Defiance began to wake in earnest. Men came up from below. The smell of the galley drifted aft. Hammocks were stowed. Buckets appeared. Holy stones followed. Deck washing began, that daily naval ritual by which His Majesty's ships proved that cleanliness could be maintained in circumstances designed by Providence to discourage it. Thomas walked the main deck, inspecting the work. "Mr. Simmons?" The boatswain's mate straightened. "Sir?" "More attention by the foremast, and check the starboard scuppers. They are not draining properly." "Aye, sir." Routine steadied him. Routine was the Navy's great answer to terror, fatigue, weather, boredom, and rank. A ship properly washed, fed, inspected and drilled might still be destroyed in action, but she would not arrive there already defeated by disorder. He went below to the gun deck. The great 32-pounders sat in their lines, lashed and silent, iron mouths pointed inward for now. Thomas ran his hand along one cold barrel. Soon enough these would speak. Soon enough men would look to him while they did. At 8 bells, Mr. Parkington, the first lieutenant, came on deck precisely. "I relieve you, Mr. Oxenham?" "I stand relieved, sir." Thomas delivered his report. Wind, watch, harbour, preparations, minor defects, no incidents of consequence. Parkington listened without interruption and nodded. "Very good. Captain wishes all officers in his cabin at 9 bells. Admiral Nelson is coming aboard to meet Rear Admiral Graves." Thomas could not entirely keep the feeling from his face. "Nelson, sir?" "Confirmed. And yes, it appears we sail for the Baltic. The Northern Alliance. So the Admiralty has decided. The captain will give details." With his watch complete, Thomas made for the wardroom. The other officers were already at breakfast, the steward serving salt beef, biscuit, butter, coffee, and the particular conversation of men who expected action, but had not yet been told enough to discuss it intelligently. "Ah," Lieutenant Reed called, "our new lieutenant honours us. How is the first watch, Oxenham? Ship still afloat?" "Barely," Thomas said, taking his place. "I thought to test the ballast by sending all hands to starboard, but the captain intervened before we capsized." The wardroom laughed. It was a different laughter from the midshipman's berth. Less wild, more measured, sharper at the edges. The wardroom was more civilized only in the sense that men here used better grammar before becoming foolish. "I hear we meet the captain at 9, said Lieutenant Menzies, who until Thomas's arrival had been the junior lieutenant and seemed undecided whether to resent relief or welcome companionship. "Word is Copenhagen," Reed said. "And Sweden and Russia and Prussia," said Dr. Blackwood, the surgeon, stirring his coffee with unnecessary force. "The whole league of armed neutrality. Neutrality indeed. Nothing neutral about seizing British ships and closing ports to our trade." "Bonaparte's work," Reed said. "Bonaparte's advantage, certainly," Blackwood replied. "He need not own a fleet if half Europe will trouble ours for him." Thomas listened more than he spoke. The League had declared that neutral ships might trade freely despite Britain's blockade of France. That alone was provocation enough in Admiralty eyes. But seizure of British merchantmen in Baltic ports had made the matter immediate. Britain required Baltic stores: timber, hemp, tar, masts, iron. Without them, fleets became speeches. At 9 bells, the officers assembled in Captain Murray's day cabin. Murray stood before the chart table, weathered, controlled, his eyes already moving from paper to officer and back again. "Gentlemen," he began without ceremony, "we sail with the tide. Destination, the Baltic. We join Admiral Parker's fleet in operations against the Northern Alliance." He touched the chart. "Our immediate concern is Copenhagen. The Danes have refused diplomatic overtures and continue to impound our merchantmen. The Admiralty authorizes force as necessary to bring them to terms." Thomas studied the Danish approaches, the narrow waters, shoals, batteries, channels, a harbour that would not forgive careless confidence. "The Danish fleet is not inconsiderable," Murray continued, "and their shore batteries are formidable. We will operate in confined water, with navigational hazards as dangerous as enemy shot." He looked up. "Mr. Oxenham." "Sir." "Your record notes particular skill in coastal charting and navigation." "I had such duties aboard Bellerophon, sir." "And at the Nile, under Foley." "I assisted with soundings and assessment, sir. Captain Foley made the tactical decision." Murray's mouth shifted slightly. "Modesty is useful, if not overdone. You will assist Mr. Haddock with the Danish approaches. I want soundings, observations, and every scrap of practical information before we stand in. Aye, sir. Assignments followed: gun divisions, magazine precautions, boat crews, signal watch, repair parties, medical preparations, marines, anchors ready to let go in emergency, springs on cables if required. Every officer left with work enough to discourage speculation. As the meeting broke, the steward appeared. Rear, Admiral Nelson and party approaching, sir. A change passed through the cabin. Men might argue over admirals in general. They did not argue over Nelson. Mr. Parkington, Murray said, see the side properly manned, the rest dismissed. Mr. Oxenham remain. Thomas waited as the others filed out. Murray studied him. I have read your service record. Hope spoke well of you. Derby also. Thank you, sir. You were at the Nile. Yes, sir. Temporarily aboard Goliath. The inside passage around the French van. Were you involved? Thomas chose carefully. I assisted with the navigational assessment. Captain Foley made the decision. Good, sir. An officer who claims another man's courage early in his career usually spends the rest of it borrowing badly. Report to Mr. Haddock. Aye, sir. Outside, the boatswain's pipes shrilled. Thomas caught only a glimpse as Nelson came aboard. Slight figure, empty right sleeve, pale face, quick eye. The kind of presence that altered the air without requiring height. Then duty pulled him below. For 4 hours he worked with Haddock, Defiance's sailing master, reviewing charts of Danish waters, comparing older merchant accounts, noting likely shifted buoys, false lights, shoal markings, and possible boat approaches for night soundings. Haddock had the leathery face of a man who had distrusted coastlines for decades and had rarely been disappointed. Charts lie, Haddock said. Some more than others. No, all. The question is whether they lie from age, ignorance, pride, or enemy interference. Thomas made a note. By the time they returned on deck, the tide had turned. Across the fleet, signals broke out. Way. Capstan bars were shipped, men bent to them. The poles clanked in rhythm. The messenger came round. The great anchor rose reluctantly from Portsmouth mud. Anchors away, called the boatswain. Set topsails and courses, Parkington ordered. Canvas climbed. Defiance gathered way. Slowly, with the grave dignity of a 74 joining war, she moved toward the harbour mouth among the ships of the fleet. Thomas supervised his division, then found one moment at the rail. England began to recede. How different this departure was from his first. Then he had been 12, a boy with a sea chest, fear disguised as attention, and William's knife in memory. Now he was lieutenant, with men to command, and a duty already larger than the coat was comfortable. Haddock appeared beside him, thinking of the Danes. The approaches, good. Better than thinking of glory. Glory has killed more officers than shoals, though shoals do their part. The charts show difficult water. The Danes will make it more difficult. Buoys moved, lights altered, local pilots suddenly forgetful. We may need boats ahead, at night near batteries. Yes, Haddock scratched his chin. Dangerous work. Necessary work? The master looked at him, then nodded. I shall mention it to the captain. They stood in silence. At length Haddock said more quietly, first action as lieutenant. Yes, different from being a midshipman. Men will look to you now, when the shot comes. They will take part of their courage from yours. Thomas looked toward the fleet ahead. I hope I do not disappoint them. You will. Every officer does in some small way. The trick is not to disappoint them where it matters. With that comfort, which was either wisdom or cruelty disguised as seamanship, Haddock moved away. Defiance stood out into the channel. The Baltic waited.
The story continues in the next chapter, so make sure to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with fellow book lovers.